This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. This is our 351 Cleveland, and I've got all the exhaust rockers on. I would have had the intake rockers on, but Trend sent me all the push rods the same length, so I'm currently waiting on FedEx to show up so I can get the intake rockers on. But we got our intake manifold cut, and we're just an hour or so away from having an assembled complete engine. Bypass hose is on. Got our priming tool, and we're getting a nice trickle out of our rocker arms. I'm getting ready to put a gauge on the block. You can read it from back here. You can also read it from right here. This is you'll get less of a reading from the back because that is the pressure that the engine sees after everything is oiled. So it's pretty typical to see 15, 16 PSI lower if you read it here than if you catch it right off the pump. This is generally where the oil pressure sending unit is for a Cleveland. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my gauge on this little 1/4 inch pipe plug. We're going to spin the pump and see what we get. All right, so got our gauge hooked up. I'm just going to turn this with a little battery drill to show you what we got. So we're getting about 65 PSI at the rear of the block. That means we would get about 75, 80 if we were pulling it right off of the fitting where the pump is, near the pump. So we got very good oil pressure. We've got oil coming out of our rocker arms, and I'll do this again when the intake push rods come and I get the preload set for the intake rocker arms. Right now I'm going to go ahead and wipe down our head flanges and get our gaskets glued down in preparation for the intake manifold installation. All right, so when we get our intake manifold on here, I'll come back and touch up all the paint. One thing I do want to make mention of is this is the heat crossover. Cleveland intakes do not have water running through them, so they can get hot, and especially can get hot when you have exhaust heat coming up through there. If you notice, the gasket blocks it, but I wouldn't expect this gasket to live very long at all. It's just a paper material. So what I can do here is block this off. Believe it or not, if you take a pop can, for us Southerners, for you Northern Yankee guys, soda cans, and cut out just a little square of it, you can silicone it to cover this and do that on the other side. And then once you put your gasket on, it'll hold it down, and your intake manifold will hold it down. I would highly recommend a pop can because it is so incredibly thin, and it doesn't do anything to the gasket at all. It will keep the heat out of your intake manifold, which will help your engine run cooler. I just dug through our trash and didn't see any pop cans in there, so I have to wait a little bit until we drink some Coke, and then I'll scavenge some material to make us some plugs. And here are our little covers. These are so thin that you can just even barely fill them with your fingernail. So I use some silicone around the hole and just push those down. The gasket will hold them down as well. So what we do now is glue our gaskets down, and no water jackets in Cleveland heads. So we just go around the port and get our gaskets on. Gaskets are siliconed on. At this point in time, we're going to set the intake on, just so everything will clamp down nice and tight. When FE bolts are go in perpendicular to the face of the head on small blocks, they go straight down. So when you put the intake on, you put the bolts in and cinch it down, it wants to almost make a wedge out of itself, and it can move gaskets around if they're not in place. So I'm going to set the intake on. It's nice and heavy, and it'll make sure that the gaskets stick really good to the heads. All right, so we're getting ready to put our intake on. Silicone on this side of the gasket around the ports as well. And we're going to be using this block off plate, and I've already painted that. Got all of our bolts ready from our AMK bolt kit. Cleveland's use 5/16 bolts in the middle, and then 3/8 on the outside. Longer bolts for your block off plate, and we're going to get this thing put on. All right, a lot has happened since last chimed in. Intake is on. Touched up all the paint. The UPS man came, so we got our rockers on. Carburetor's on. This is a 800 CFM double pumper, refurbished by Drew Pojednik down in Georgia, Air Fuel Spark. He does a lot of my carburetor work. I just got through running the valves, and now I'm just priming the pump to make sure we're getting oil from, it's about to kill my drill motor, but we're getting oil from everywhere, getting good pressure as well. So we're getting a good little trickle from the rocker arm, and everything is staying put on our lifters. You should not be able to push those down once you get done priming. So it's one of those checklists that you do. They can move side to side a little bit because of your guide plate clearance, but other than that, they should be tight. So, getting ready to put the valve covers on. I hope they fit. They fit with the exhaust rockers on. These intake rockers stick up pretty far towards the intake. So, we'll try it, see what happens. They actually stayed put. They didn't go anywhere. So that means we're even going to be in better shape with the gaskets on it. Before I put those on, hold on a minute, I'm trying to set that down without dropping it. So before I do that, what I like to do, I'm going to spray all the valve train with some Comp Cams lube. It's kind of a new thing that I've been doing. I can't really put a quantitative finger on if it helps or not, but it makes me feel better to see all the springs dripping with lubricant. And what we're going to do before that, get a ratchet on the other side here. And we're going to be in preparation for putting our distributor in. So I'm going to roll this over. See that exhaust valve is closing. That means the intake valve is starting to open. So it's going to go all the way down and then start back up. And then we'll switch it one more time. You should be looking at your balancer. And these are quench heads, so I'm going to stop it somewhere around 32 degrees or so. And when I drop my distributor in, the rotor points toward number 1 spark plug wire on your terminal. And when they're on the dyno, we'll pump some gas in it, and then it'll fire right off. I think this is what the British would call a proper 351 Cleveland. Doesn't look too shabby. Only thing I don't like is a lot of my paint flaked off my valve cover bolts. So I may try to find, kind of a non-shiny zinc plated flanged bolt to go on there and look okay. Anytime that you put a socket on that stuff, it just wants to roll off there. But we are done, and we'll see if I can get a dyno. Don't think I can do it next week. No, the dyno is booked for a couple of days, and got some other stuff going on, but maybe the week after that, get her on the dyno. I need to order an engine cradle for it. I'm out of Windsor Cleveland cradles, but we are ready to rock and roll. My opinion, one of the best engines that Ford ever made. And I would put the Cleveland up against a lot of big blocks for sure. So looking forward to seeing how this one does. Hoping it'll hit the 400 mark. We'll see. We'll have we've got the modern pistons. We've got the lot bigger camshaft in stock with a little bit of overlap pulling on the intake valve. Got a nice carburetor. What else we got? A lot of roller rockers and that sort of thing. So in my mind, it should make it. Headers on the dyno. We'll see what happens. Thank you guys very much for watching. Seems like we got this one done fairly quickly. I wish they all would go this easily, but that's how it rolls. All right, if you guys haven't subscribed, you may want to do so that you don't miss out on the dyno results for this guy and all the other cool Ford engines that are coming through. I'll talk to you all soon.